Welcome, welcome, welcome.
Hello, everyone. We'll get a few more people here. We got some visitors on the YouTube.
And we are live. One watching now. Is that me or you?
Well, counting you and me, there we have 13 participants. So
All
I guess
right.
we count. We are participating.
Our valued viewers. Excuse me. Get some water here. Okay. Oh, you got a thank you.
Oh, oh, John. Yeah. That was what was wrong with that? A cracked gear on the axle.
Kryptonite.
Yes, they needed a new kryptonite infusion.
He broke an axle?
No, just the gear cracked.
No. Okay.
It was way easier than it seems to fix.
Okay. All right. Any news? Should we do the welcomes again? We probably don't need to. We're already live. So,
Well, we have a new person here, Tom C.
Tom C, seeing you. I skipped many names. Hello, Norbert. Sean, Stephen, Wayne, John. Okay, well, should we get started? Shall we? Shall we
Yeah,
begin? What do we got? Any news update at the factory, the warehouse there?
I don't know. They don't tell
I
me
don't
anything.
know. You're there. You're
I
at the
know.
warehouse.
Well,
You
I'm at
are
the
at the
warehouse.
warehouse. Yeah.
I have display cases built, display plexi covers, dust covers built.
Okay.
That's about it.
And then you posted. I did notice you posted those couple of videos on the Shay. You posted a Shay video, short
Yeah,
video.
Stacy did that.
Stacy did that.
Yeah, we got two shades.
Okay.
Not
Should
supposed
we?
to tell anyone.
Shh. But there's the big boy that you put up there. There's a link. There's. I know we have no links there. That's. I saw that was
Yeah,
on.
on the YouTube channel, I think they're the videos of the shades. I did run it while she did the video. So,
Congratulations. You
you
had a
know,
hard job. You had to figure out how to do that, did you?
yeah, I had to read the manual.
All right. Well, I think we got um, any updates we should talk about. There's no. Let's see.
There was a there was a CS2 update, believe it or not.
The CS2 update. I don't know.
Yeah.
Interesting.
It's 4.3.0, but now it's version 34.
Mm.
Yeah.
And we are at, if I'm current, our software version on the CS3 is 2.5.2 parentheses 6.
Yes.
I don't have any information on the mobile stations or anything like that right now. Oh, excuse me. Um,
John's asking a question. Yeah. Um, he says he picked up a bunch of vintage digitized lokes as a way to figure out the address without trying many different combinations. Only have a CS2 or 6021. Yeah, I would say ask the owner what the address is. That'd be the easiest way because I know he knows who he got them from. I won't name names. Um,
he can't sniff the address on the CS2.
you can, but it's hit and miss. Um, if they're MFX, then you shouldn't have an issue, and you can get in and see what the default address is. If they are older ones with dip switches, you just have to go in and either try the default address unless they've been converted, and then usually
Well, the dip switches, I would look up an old. Um, you could probably do a search on a
nope,
table.
no dip switches.
Yeah, so it's all programmed, early programmed. Yeah, I'd attempt connecting it to the programming track and seeing if the
Yes,
CS2 can sniff out the address.
it'll if they're not MFX, you can do a search for the addresses.
Yeah.
And I seem to recall that it works just okay. Um, and I mean, it works just okay with Marklin decoders, other branded decoders. It's gonna probably not work out so well. So, any information, a lot of people use either the 2-digit addresses of the item number, usually the class of locomotive it is, or a combination thereof. Of, if it's a 103, it might be 03, it might be 10, something like that. See if you can maybe, do a shot in the dark and hit it for that. We try and make it obvious. See if there's a number on the bottom or on the box or in the manual. Um, that's a good way to kind of look around for an address. That would be about all I can say. Otherwise, and if they're MFX, it's no problem. But if they're like the 60760 decoders, you can do a reset on if you're on the programming track, enter a phantom locomotive, and I think it would work if you enter a phantom locomotive, have it on the programming track, and do a reset of the decoder with a value of 8 in CV number 8, see if that works. That would reset the decoder back to the factory setting, which, then you don't know that address either. But
Yeah,
if
there you
it's uh if it's a 760 decoder, I think that would put it back to address 78. So
go. Yeah, I think for the most part. Then some of those would default to, similar models, 24, 48, depending on the model.
yeah, if it's a factory decoder
Yeah.
installed, then yeah, it would go back to the factory address, I believe.
Yeah, like if you had a KOF 2 or
Yeah,
a class 42,
yeah.
generally they use the same addresses
Right.
across the board.
So
So cool. Anyways, what do we got? Nothing. No news. You got your. Should we kick it in? Feel free to chime in with questions. Anybody?
yeah. Uh-oh, Rick K is on. That's gonna be trouble.
Good. Anyways, all right. What do you think? Should we kick it off?
Well, anybody have any questions we can answer really quickly?
Anything
Um,
you're excited to mention? Is there an easy way to find MSD3 decoders for old locomotives as the 3000 series?
well, any MSD3 decoder will fit in there.
Yeah,
Um,
I mean, the MSD3s are readily available, right? So
yeah.
get you the part number on those.
John Ferguson has his hand up, and we have a question. Are you going to be at Eurowest? Yes, we will both be at Eurowest.
Amazing. MSD3 60978 is a new current number. That's sound.
60972.
The site's listing is 60978. 975. So yeah, there's various models, I would assume. Looks like it's a mounting plate issue. If you want one with a 21 pin, the listing they have on the site is 60975.
Share that screen.
972. I can just share a screen there.
I don't know where you're getting those numbers. Oh, 60978. No, that's different.
Yeah, look, see, this is the site here. Product details, articles. Yeah, see, there's all kinds of numbers. You're saying 7.2.
7.2 is the one I usually use when I do a non-sound. It's
Oh,
got the
that's an MLD3. We're talking an MSD3.
MSD3. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah,
You're
so
right.
here you go. Yeah, you just type
For the
sound.
MSD3, I usually use a 60977.
Well, look, they even have an 8 pin adapter.
Hmm.
That's a 985.
Yes.
The 7.5 is probably going to be one of the easiest ones if you have a programming board or a test board.
Well,
The 21
75,
pins are
76,
easy.
77, they're all the same. They just have a different locomotive.
Well, there's a different mounting board. You can see the
No,
mounting.
that's totally different for a special
That's a
locomotive.
special one. Yeah, you don't really need that one. So, but at the top here, 8 pin board sound.
Yeah.
Yeah. So either one of those works. 976, 75,
976,
76.
975, 76, or 77.
So these could all be up. Yeah, these things are kind of related to what steam, electric, right?
Yeah, and
And
that's if you're not going to program sounds, you get which one you want. But I usually get
yeah,
the 977s and just program whatever.
yeah, you can see this the headings up here: electric locomotive sounds,
Right.
diesel, and these are generic. So
Yeah.
you want if you need to customize it, then it doesn't really matter which one if you have a programming board because then you can upload different sounds. So at
I
least
usually order the
that.
977s because it's an electric sound, and um, I think that's the one that is sold the least. So it's usually the ones we have in stock.
Readily available. But again, you
Yes.
are programming this, so
Yes, I'm programming it, so it really doesn't matter which one I get.
yeah. And let's see other comments. C-Track's transition to incline. We actually have an article on that one.
Yes.
Um, uh,
Hmm.
I would suggest, Brian, if you can, send us an email at digital@marklin.com. Again, that's digital@marklin.com, and we can give you the reference article on that one. Rick did a good article on that. So, yeah, just send us email comments so we can
I
remember.
actually learned a lot on that. A lot of stuff I never realized since I was a kid. You know, as a kid, you just want to play with them. So
Yeah. And welcome to our viewer from New Zealand, Malcolm. Good to see you.
we have a question here. Is there a possibility to add announcements to a locomotive? Um, Not a factory decoder. Those you can add. You can add your own sounds in one of the retrofit decoders, but the factory decoders are basically, so to say, locked. I hear you can reprogram them if you reprogram them with the same sound file. Let's have a hand raised by John Ferguson. I mentioned that earlier, but we haven't said anything.
Yeah,
You want to allow him to talk?
we can. I did see his question. He wants to know about the shuttles. So
Oh, yeah, he was asking
the
if we
shuttle
could do a
macro.
quick example on how to do a shuttle route, which is pretty involved in the setup. But we can glaze over it briefly, I guess.
Yeah, and if you're asking me, there's never a quick answer. So,
Yeah, so later in the show where I can take my nap would be a good time.
shit, thanks. Yeah, okay, so let's kind of, I don't know, we can raise that question. Do we want to allow him to talk? John, if you're there, we can take a live conversation if you have a microphone. Go ahead.
Yes, the shuttle macro. I've tried to use it and looked at the containers and what you put in them,
Yeah.
and it's not clear what you put in some of the containers, and so especially at the end. And I was
Yeah.
wondering whether you had any thoughts on it.
Okay. Yeah. John, if you, yeah, we can kind of go over that. I don't know. Do we want to do that now? We can probably do that now if we want.
Yeah, I could use a
Let's go.
nap.
And meanwhile, I'm going to set this up, John, and I think we'll just Rick. You want to answer the other two questions while I kind of
Yeah, yeah.
try to get something
So
set
we
up.
got a question, what is Eurowest, when and where? And Eurowest is a big, well, I wouldn't say big. It's a small show in the San Francisco Bay Area that the local ETE chapter puts on,
It's
but
in
it is,
Belmont, San Carlos, Belmont,
it's in San Carlos,
San Carlos. Yeah, at the
but
Hillary
it
Aviation
is
Museum.
95% Marklin.
Yeah.
And so if you're looking for something, that's the place to go if you want to come out to San Francisco. Um, it's on July 12th and 13th, and that's about it in south of San Francisco. But
You can, if you go to ete.org, you can get the address and the information on that website. They actually list it as
yeah,
it's under the Euro shows heading.
it's at an aviation museum, so
Yeah.
the to get in, you get to go through the museum also. It's a small museum, but it's a good venue. There's like 70 something tables, 80 tables of stuff that people sell.
Good. Let's see. Sorry.
So we have a question. I have a CS3 and HO layout. Can I run a Z-scale track in the background, power controlled with a CS3? Well, unless, kind of, yes, I would say the thing is Marklin doesn't make Z-gauge in digital, so you wouldn't be running it unless you have, a third party digital decoder in it. And then you have to worry about uh, the voltage. What's the voltage for the digital decoder that's in your Z gauge? And if it doesn't take the 19 volts, then on a 60045 transformer, it goes down to 15 volts with a switch. And at that point, you're running less voltage to your main layout for your Z gauge in the background. So I guess theoretically you could get a booster, run the booster with the 60045 on 15 volts and run the main to go into the Z gauge, and then run the main uh, central station output to your HO layout. So there's a workaround for you if you
Okay.
understand
I
that.
think before we get to the other questions, let's kind of tackle John's question here if we can. I'm going to share my CS3 screen. All right, so John, we're just going to do a quick run through on these containers, just so you kind of know, because I know this got a little confusing. Obviously, the first container here is you select the locomotive that you want to run the shuttle on. The CS start, CSN, and the S88 contact start and middle containers are basically your contacts at a start and end would be at each end, and the middle obviously is going to be some kind of depot start in the middle. Speed's pretty self-explanatory. The one that people usually don't get is this pause flag container. You can actually set up either a control contact or you can have track contacts that you can put in this container. And what that does is that if there's any instance on the layout where you need to sort of put the shuttle on hold where it doesn't run continuously, that's what this pause flag container is. So you would basically have another contact that you can activate. You might even be able to do it with a signal light in theory. Like if you had a signal light that goes red because it's going to run through your shuttle line, then that would actually pause the macro, and then theoretically your shuttle should stop. So that's probably the thing that hitches most people up, because the rest of these are fairly explanatory. And also remember, when you go into the edit modes, you can basically let's see. Oh, there's no container. Each of these steps, it kind of depends on what you're putting in here. I don't know if you can actually have delays in here. You probably can't, but or the ends. But yeah, usually it kind of depends on where your start speeds and such. So just kind of play around with that. That's probably going to be as much as I can really go through on the macro container, because there's really not a whole lot of options. So everything is kind of configured through what you're putting in the container. Okay. So we will. If you have any further questions on that, John, just send us an email. I know we've had an article out there. So okay. That's that. So the other questions, what is the proper AWG, the gauge wire that you use for big layouts for main and feeder wires, and which colors should be single stranded? I did do an article on that on the wiring a while back.
Here.
The gauging isn't too bad. What did we use? I think it was 2022 gauge for bus wires.
Well,
18.
there's the 1 gauge wire, which is let's see, 0.0012 square inch, whatever that calculates out to.
Yeah,
And it
in
uses
the
gauge
article, I
wires.
did the conversions in the article, and it's really not
Yeah,
that heavy. I don't even think it's nothing bigger than 18, nothing thicker than 18.
and then the HO is 0.0003 square inch cross section. Basically, um, I've always recommended using the Marklin wire because it's a stranded copper wire where it's not going to break inside the insulation. A solid copper wire can break inside the insulation, and it's just going to cause you trouble. People try and use telephone wire, the solid copper telephone wire. They think they're saving money, but they're only adding aggravation. So,
Yeah, I definitely would recommend stranded over a single core.
and copper rather than aluminum.
Yeah.
Um, and the colors, I did an article on, what the standard, so to say, colors are for Marklin. You can email us asking, for that article. It's not a problem to send it to you. It's digital@marklin.com, and just mention it's your monthly article about the wire.
Yeah, you can send us an email if you want to request that, because it converted the way they measured it to actual gauges, and
Yeah,
it's kind of in between. But it's really not that heavy. It's kind of amazing how thin the wire is for just standard feed wires. But for bus wires, yeah, you do want a little thicker. That's why you can definitely use
right.
the LGB branded wires. So
No, it's Marklin. It's not LGB. I
yeah,
mean,
it is
Marklin.
marking out, but it's
Yeah,
usually what they use for the 1 gauge.
yeah. I mean,
That's what I meant to say.
wire's wire.
Yeah.
Electricity doesn't care what color the insulation is either. And we have a question of what distance do you usually connect feed wires? And we usually say about 6 to 8 linear feet
Yeah.
of track, so to say. That way, it's a redundancy in the code. So
Yeah. One more question on the YouTube channel. FX locos must be on the programming track to change the settings. That is correct.
no.
MFX does not
Oh
need
yeah,
to be the
FX. Yes,
programming track. Yeah.
MFX can be done anywhere on the track. FX needs to be on the programming track.
Yeah. Cool. I'm glad you guys are asking questions. So, all right. Anything else? Okay. So far, yeah, just guys think. If you have anything, just chime in. We can probably proceed, right? With your, want to go with your article?
Yeah.
I don't think I've downloaded mine, but you have it handy. Are you going to load yours up?
I have mine handy. You might need yours so that you can scroll.
Yeah, let's see. Right. Okay. chime away, sir.
Okay, I was just reviewing my article real quick so I see
Remember
what I
what you
want to
wrote,
talk about.
so you can remember.
Basically, yeah, as soon as we write them, we try and forget them. That's why we put it down on, pen to paper, so to say.
That's like as soon as we're done with this webinar, I try to forget that Rick exists.
You're not very good at it.
No, I'm not. Sean's got a crocodile. He says he doesn't like to start moving unless he gives it a nudge. Any
Yep.
any comments about that?
Yeah. Yeah. Let me stop sharing. Um, you can send us an email. Request.
Great.
Yeah, I know. It's a
Thanks.
standard answer. What happens is your commentator and your motor gets clogged with brush debris, and the segments are at that point electrically connected. And that could be one problem. See, that needs to be cleaned. Another problem is um, the brushes touching the commutator. Basically, it's electricity. So it's very hot. It gets very hot at that point. That's why you see the sparks. You see the glow almost of it, like in the old motors. Um, and so what happens is with the oil and stuff that builds up on the brush, it will be touching the commutator, and when the rotor stops turning, it stops, and then it kind of like caramelizes, is my theory. And so the brush isn't actually touching the commutator at that point. It's almost like sugar. If you melt it and cool it, it'll caramelize. And so there's a barrier in between the brush and the armature. And when you give it a push, it breaks that barrier and cleans it off until you stop again. So I like to make sure I either use new brushes or at least soak mine overnight in like alcohol or something like that if I'm doing a maintenance on a locomotive. That way it can leach the oils and stuff out of the brush again. And that seems to help it a lot as far as the brushes. Once I get everything cleaned, I also add spring pressure on the brushes. You have the brush arms that come down, they coil around two pins, and then they go down to the brushes. And I adjust those so there's more spring pressure, and that seems to help also. So you can just request that newsletter article and we can send it to you also.
Yeah. He made a comment that he cleaned and he had changed the brushes. So, but
Okay.
yeah,
Yeah,
got the
that'll
same.
definitely help until they get dirty again. But I think adding spring pressure kind of keeps them clean. Um, but again, it's just a theory.
Because can that occur from over oiling, over
Yeah, any
lubricating?
debris in there. And
Yeah. So just
yeah,
be
I'm a
careful
big
if you,
fan of not over oiling.
yeah, if you lubricated it, just kind of be mindful of that. That's a possibility.
The
So,
oil has to go somewhere and it's not coming out, so it's going in.
all right. So let's kind of resume with the normal programming.
Yeah. Think you gonna have to, oh, I know what I did.
You had something shared on the screen earlier.
Yeah. I couldn't find the newsletter, so it was behind my screen. Okay, so where are we? So I realize, we have a tough time coming up with topics. So any suggestions you guys might do would be great. Or suggestions for us you might send us would be great. Um, Something that is not specific to your layout as far as why doesn't my train run going through my mountains? Like, well, we don't know. We can't really replicate that or anything here. So a generic topic would be wonderful. If you could come up with any, let us know. So I realized along that lines, we never covered the 76300 series, the older style light signals, on how to install them in the CS3. I think we did it for a CS2 because the CS2 was out at the time, the CS3 wasn't. And once the CS3 came out, we had other topics we were talking about.
Do you want to clarify the difference between the 300 series and the 400 series?
Yeah, the 300 series they are programmable. Earlier version of the 76400 series, 76400 series is MFX. And with the MFX, you get it opens up doors for different signal changing aspects. You can have them fade in, fade out. You can have them change instantly. You could have a pause between one going on, or it should say one turning off and the next one turning on. They're configurable. They're a little bit easier to use, but once a signal is entered into your system, it doesn't matter. At that point, they're all the same. It's almost like having an old 3700 series locomotive with the dip switches. Once it's in your central station, you use it just like any other locomotive. So um, it's really not that big deal. You don't need to upgrade every locomotive to MFX unless you really want to, which is fine. You do have different or better control over the aspects of the locomotive at that point. But anyway, I'm doing a Curtis and going down a rabbit hole here. So the 76300 series is the older style light signal. There's no semaphores in that series. And they looked wonderful. They look prototypical. They look just like the MFX versions now. It's they switch at a nice aspect. They're nice and bright. They're a little hard to see because they're kind of directional, but they're supposed to be pointing at a locomotive, not at, somebody, off about 45 degrees. So, other than that, let's get to it as far as the programming. Now, on these older signals, they came from the factory with a programming clip, and the clip basically ties two sides of the decoder together. It jumpers them to put it into programming mode. So the clip was always on the circuit board when you bought the decoder. Nowadays, if it's a used signal, it may not have the clip, but that's easily overcome by any kind of piece of metal touching the pads on each side. You can do it with a piece of wire, solder it to it. You can, make a clip out of a little piece of copper or metal or something like that. And it'll do. It just puts the decoder into programming mode when that clip is engaged and the signal gets power. So once you're ready to install well, I should say set up the decoder in the central station. First you need to have a signal in the article list. So you put in the article list, you tell it what kind of signal it is, and it will be ready to accept the programming. The signal will. Because you have to touch the signal icon in the central station to get it to accept the code that is being shown. So with the article in the central station, you have the clip on the circuit board. All you do is touch the stop bar to give it track power, and the signal will go into programming mode. Once it's in programming mode, it'll flash the aspects that it wants to be programmed. And at that point, you just touch the icon on the central station. It accepts that as its new address, and it will continue on from there. If it's a simple block signal, it will just stop at that point and nothing else will happen. You hit the stop bar, you take the clip off, and it operates on that address. Now, if it's got other aspects to it, it's going to go into a secondary program mode where the other lights will flash, and then you hit the other aspects on your central station. So you say if it's an exit signal, the yellow and green, I believe, will light up instead of the red and green. Not light up, but alternate. Something like that. I forget what the sequence is, but it's the next level of programming because there's more than two lights. If there's a distance signal on the mast, after the main head is programmed, the distance signal will start to flash in the yellow and green. So at that point, you hit the distance, you hit the signal for the next, or the, let's see, you hit the icon for the next signal. And that way it programs that distance signal head to the address of the next signal, which also means you need the next signal already programmed into your central station so that it's ready to accept that programming, because you can't just program the distance signal, you need to program the entire signal at once. So it takes a little bit of forethought, and you can do this repeatedly. So it's really not that big a deal if you screw up, because every time you have the clip on and you give it power, it goes into programming mode. Now, if you go into programming mode, say you forgot to take the clip off and you're still in programming mode, you can just stop the central station, take the clip off, and it'll still be the address that you programmed before. Unless you make a change, when it's in programming mode, it keeps the same address it had before. So while you're programming the new address into the signal, you got to make sure you don't have any trains running, you don't have anything else going on the layout, because it could accept that address into the signal as its address. And then, you have to go back into programming mode and set it right again. But you don't want to be having trains running on a automatic route or anything. So that's about it for programming the signal. But you have to remember that a entry signal and an exit signal are going to have more than one address on your article list. So just a simple block will switch from green to red, but to get other aspects, it takes more than one address. It will take the next address that it's assigned to. So if you set it as address 1, and the the shunting maneuvers will be on address 2 of your signal. So you also have to remember not only having other signals if you have a distance signal programmed into your central station already, but you also have to know if your signal that you're programming is going to take 1 or 2 addresses. So just a little heads up there, if any of that makes sense. There is one thing I noticed, that when I programmed this signal into my central station, that I picked the first signal that I saw the icon with a shunting maneuvers and an exit signal, basically. And so there's this in the picture here for S3, there's 2 different icons for a exit signal, and one has the shunting maneuvers right here separate from the main head. So when I chose that one, the icons were actually backwards, where if I had the green icon right up here, if I selected that on the central station, the yellow and green lights come on, which kind of goes back to a flaw we saw in the central station 2, where it would do this, and that never got fixed. I think to this day it still is backwards in the aspects. But what I noticed was when I changed to the other exit signal, where the shunting maneuvers were allowed, and it's on the head rather than down here where it's a separate box, the aspects were correct. So there could be other instances where if you don't choose the right signal, it could possibly not show the right aspect. I don't have enough signals to test everything, nor do I have all the time to do that. So
Oh,
just be
what if,
aware that if you do get the wrong aspect showing on your signal, then you might want to look and see if there's another icon in your central station that will do it correctly.
what I find interesting, and I don't know if you caught this, is on the left image, the main head doesn't match the main head on
Right,
the display.
right.
But it's interesting that they
Because
put the switching box underneath it.
it's almost like an entry signal with the switching maneuvers allowed.
Yeah, so that probably I'm thinking that's probably why it doesn't match. But you didn't have another icon that didn't have the.
No, those were the two I had a choice of. So I tried the other one and everything worked
Uh,
fine.
okay, yeah, I think that. Yeah, that's definitely that probably doesn't apply anyways. That's probably why it didn't really work.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
But at first it was okay. Well, that one has a shunting maneuvers. I'll use that.
yeah,
And yeah, it was wrong and kind of
okay,
threw me for a
yeah.
loop for a little while. I almost called you and said, "Look what I found." So
Moment of discovery there.
yeah.
Cool.
So what we noticed way back when we were putting these on Curtis's layout was that the address for the signal is stored up in the head somewhere. We're not entirely sure how this works, or even if we're 100% correct, but the only way we can figure it out is that's the way it works, because if you program a signal head or a signal mast on one base decoder, say for address 5, you can take that signal mast and put it out on your layout somewhere on a different base decoder and it will still be address 5.
Yes.
So that opens up the doors to have, so to say, a decoder on your bench to program the signals and then put them on your layout if you already have the base for the mast screwed down or whatever.
Yeah,
If you
if you
break,
can, I'm just gonna say if you can go back to figure one and zoom in there. Okay, and if you can zoom in on that image, just show them where the contact points are on the decoder.
yeah,
You can solder wires to one of the
yes,
bases. And I basically, what we did here is we wired it to a switch so I could switch it
yes.
on and off and use this base to program. Yeah, see, that's one
So
in.
that one there and this one here, that's the clip coming around the back side. It's basically the cardboard clip
Right.
that's on the left. And all you have to do is solder a wire to each side and go to a switch where one, it makes contact, or two, it doesn't.
Yeah, and
And
I basically
so
use one base. Yeah.
you can use one base to program all your signals. And so if you break a mast, as some of us occasionally do, it's very easy to program a signal off on your bench and then just slide it onto your base down here because they're all common. So it was a really kind of a nice feature, because both Curtis and I have broken these. I think everybody basically does. I don't think we've, not just regarding signals, but I don't think there's anything that anyone else has done that we haven't done first as far as screwing something up. So,
I haven't
um,
I haven't looked at the 74, the 60, the 400 series on the digital signals. Do they come off the base? The semaphores don't, but
no, but the other ones do. But the MFX version mast will not work on these non-MFX version bases or
yeah,
decoders, and vice versa. They don't work together. You can put them on your layout and mixed up, so to say. You can have a 76300 series and then a 76400 series and a 76300 series signal. That's no problem, but you can't physically take the mast off one and put it on the other.
yeah.
um let's see, what else was in here? Oh, so on these, what we noticed when we were doing these, this is kind of a was always kind of kind of annoying for us was these wires here and here. The wire itself is kind of, the insulation is kind of stiff. So what happens a lot is they break off. The solder breaks right, or the wire breaks right at the solder. And we were constantly having to resolder them. And you can resolder them very easily. Um, you have to have kind of a fine tip to get between these components because it is in kind of a little valley. And we got pretty good at that because those would break off fairly, fairly common to break them off.
Yeah, you
Um,
never wanted to move them once you put them in place.
right. Just be careful with them. Treat them carefully. You'll be fine. If you have more than one signal, I would say you have a representation of which wire goes where. And if you don't, I would say take a picture of it or, refer to this article
Yeah.
because there's a purple and a white wire and they need to go on the correct sides. The other two wires up here, I think they are both just red. I don't think that matters where they go because those just allow track power to flow through this, somewhere on here, there's through this relay. So
Yeah, it's probably
if you understand the wiring of a signal and how they stop track power, these two are the wires that stop track power or allow track power. These two are the wires that go to the signal. These two are the wires that go to track power to get the digital code. And it's kind of weird because Marklin made these brown and yellow. Um, so the brown goes to the brown on, track power, and the yellow will go to the red of track power.
Yeah, and there was another plug that you could plug in a distance signal to. I believe it
Yeah,
was
I
only
think one of these
two
down
pairs
here is
in
for the
there. Yeah,
distance signal.
I hated
If
those
it's a
wires. They
separate
were so
distance
brittle.
signal,
Those
the
wires were.
instructions will tell you, what plug goes where.
Yeah,
And if you don't have the instructions, they're still on the Marklin website. So
yeah, yeah. Those brittle wires drove me nuts.
oh yeah, they did. They did. But then, it really didn't take us long to learn to treat them gingerly, and we didn't really have any too much trouble after that. So
Yeah, I got around to. At times, what I did was I would wrap the wire around the cover and tape it. That way,
yeah,
I just wouldn't flex it. So,
a little spot of hot glue right on that solder should hold them too.
yeah. Huh, cool. All right, we have a question in between. I'm converting an older analog electric loc to digital. I was wondering about the merits of also hooking my CS3 to the power catenary and converting the loc to take power from both catenary and track simultaneously for redundancy.
Yeah.
I wouldn't
Let's
recommend
see. Well, no, here's the answer. Um, a decode or a locomotive can usually only switch from one to the other.
it. Yes.
There's a switch in there. Now you could obviously an older locomotive, you can take that switch out and wire it directly. So in theory, you could do that. Um, the thing is, you don't really need the redundancy. For one, Marklin doesn't recommend running digital through the catenary because it's such a small contact area of that wiper on that wire. Um, it's not a good enough source to transfer code, so they don't really recommend that.
Yeah,
A lot of people also say, well, I want to run analog electric locomotives on the catenary on my digital layout, where yes, you can do that, but uh, catenary is very fragile. It is prone to, so to say, the wires falling off the masts. And if you have your catenary energized and something happens and you tear one of those wires off the mast and it contacts a track below in the wrong spot, you're going to blow up your central station. So I personally do not recommend that at all. Um, that's about it.
I think on maybe a technical side, even you really don't know if there's a timing difference between receiving a digital signal from the catenary as opposed to from the shoe. And any kind of interruption in your digital signal is enough to disrupt it. And
Yeah.
then you won't have proper communication to your decoder anyways, because it'd be like having an echo. Um,
Yeah. A reverb.
you wouldn't know what it wouldn't know what signal is. You might get duplicated bits of code in there, and that's going to throw off, and you'd lose control. So yeah, that's another reason I would
Well,
probably.
not only that, I mean, the locomotives are also so heavy. There's a good contact to the wheels. As long as you have a good ground, good clean wheels. Both Curtis and I ground the motor and the chassis or unpowered bogie to the decoder. Now, even though the motor has traction tires, it does get some continuity from the wheels due to the flanges. So it's just a little bit of redundancy internally rather than externally. And the slider, again, you have so much weight from the locomotive and the spring on the slider. I did an article on sliders and how important it is for them to be nice and flat and clean and all that good stuff. And again, digital at marklin.com, we can send you that article also. So,
We're happy to send out articles.
yes.
Okay, nice job.
Thank you.
All right, I guess it's on to my bit of the article. Okay, so my article is basically a continuation of transferring a profile from your CS2 to use on your CS3, and just kind of talking about those issues and setup considerations. This particular issue had to do with a lot of it's reassigning the contact sensors, and some of the pitfalls I ran across because of some of the setup that was done on there, mainly duplicated sensors that basically referred to the same contact. So let's get into that. So the first thing we look at here, and I'll just take a quick, this one shouldn't take long, it's just a quick look at the article here. So initially, when you get everything in there, your articles are going to get reconfigured when you load it into the CS3. In the previous article, I basically renumbered the default number that the CS3 assigned to the contact number, and I kept a reference to the contact number that was listed in the CS2, and you can see there's a huge difference because the CS2 loaded it up by page, or 16 numbers on a page and then another page, whereas the CS3 just loads them up according to a sequential order. And the other thing is here, it basically, everything got assigned under a button matrix after, I think it went through the first 16 addresses went under a direct, and everything else got assigned to a button matrix, which, it's not something we use. So the CS2 primarily used the older S88s. And in the CS3, since the user here isn't going to use new S88s, which uses basically the RJ45 connection or Ethernet type cables, this one, everything was being used had to be connected to a Link 88 or S88 link. And because he's using the old ribbon cable connection, everything needs to be reset to bus 3, because on the Link S88, you have the RJ45 one on bus 1 and 2, your 16 direct inputs, and then the rest are on bus 3. So that's basically that. Now we're going to actually kind of get into duplicated sensors and how different triggers are. And rather than kind of going through the article, we will go through the actual CS3, and I can show you an example of stuff that we kind of I came across in dealing with that. So let me share the CS3 screen here. All right, so this should be the correct one, yeah. Okay, so in its basics configuration, I just wanted to show some things you might run into. This example, basically, you have a track contact, and then sort of whether or not this is a control contact or a feedback contact, and we'll get into that in a bit. There are configuration errors. So let's quickly go over the event first, and that's TC arrival. That's this first one. And basically how it works is the train's coming here from the left. Once it makes contact with that, it's going to switch the signal to stop. So it blocks off any incoming traffic. And in this example, it rediverts the contact track. And that's just that's the primary event that we're dealing with. Now, the setup that he had in there is he basically had the main contact track, and in the bottom of the page he essentially had a duplicate contact down here for some kind of visual reference or manual control. And if I try to do that in the trackpad, or sorry, wrong event. Nope, I don't need the help window either. Clicking too fast. We're going to edit the trackboard page. Let's get this out of the way, and we'll sort of slow this down. And you can see that track contact's already on the layout. In the CS2, you could basically have two track contacts on the same page of the same item. But if I try to drag this on here, nothing happens. So you can only have one contact in there. So the way the CS3 imported it is it basically created a secondary sensor under a different address. And so there's all of a sudden there's a disconnect. So there's no duplicate of this. So you cannot connect the same item or you can't have duplicates of this contact on the same page. So this is why at the top here I created this control contact. Now you can either use this is as a one-way reference, and we'll kind of get to it, or we can do it as a two-way reference. So essentially on a one-way reference, what we'll do is we'll go back to the event stream here. I don't need to do that. We'll go to the event, and we'll go into the edit of this event, edit event. And we can close this. Okay. Now, what you can do now is essentially what happens is when the train makes contact, it's obviously going to go yellow. So it's similar to just doing this, right? But what we wanted to do is we want to be able to see it on this other icon. So what we can now do is we can actually drag it into this step. And this, now if we close this and close the event, because nothing works when you're in edit mode. And if I click on this, you're going to see that nothing happens. It's not going to change that. Okay. And the reason is because this is in a conditional mode. It's got the question mark right here. So this basically nullifies that action. So what we want to do is go back into edit mode, edit event. And you go into click on this icon so you can see that it's set as a condition. And what we want to do is we actually want to set it as an action. And if I click this OK and get out of there, and again, we got to get out of edit mode. And let's basically turn this off. Now, if you can see when I click this, the first action is going to attack. It's going to not do what I want it to do. So close, let's see, contact track. I'm in stop mode. No, this should work. Yeah, see now it works. All right, so set that off. Okay, so the other thing that did is this is all that was needed in the CS2, but because we have an ability to set this on, he didn't have anything that turned that on. So basically this would go off and this would stay on permanently. So we can't have that So what we're going to do, and this is another trick that we can show you guys. So we go back into edit mode. We're going to actually edit this event. And so Marklin, in one of its updates, which is great, they added this copy feature. And if you look at the name, this is TC arrival, which basically the track contact in its arrival state. I'm going to actually copy this. I'm just going to click this once. And you can see it automatically changes it, but it added a duplicate up here. And even though I don't need a duplicate, what I'm now going to do is I'm actually going to here and I'm going to edit this mode so I don't have to reload it. I'm going to change its position to disabled state. I'm also going to go back into this and I'm going to change this state to off. And because I don't need to duplicate these functions, I will just delete those. And then for clarity, I'm going to basically edit this page so show that it's a departure or an off state. And now you can see that once I get out of edit mode, give the system a chance to operate. If I click on it, I now have two-way control. Okay, so this is just a one-way state. So basically this controls it. If I do this, nothing happens, right? So if I'm trying to have sort of manual control, I mean, it's kind of stupid to do it on one page, but for some reason they did it on the CS2, which something else occurs later on, which I'll cover as well. Again, there's kind of a lot that went on when I was reprogramming this. The next thing what we're going to do is we're going to go back into our events here, and we're actually going to create a new event here. And we're going to add this control contact now to this. And you see it did a weird thing. It went into manual mode. And what I found out was this is actually a control contact. It's not actually a live contact. So in other words, it's one of these manual controllers. But the discovery here is, and just to sort of add this, I'm going to add a couple of commands here. And just so we know what it's doing, we're going to change the aspect here to green. And change that so we know that there's a physical change going on here. Now what I found out, and which is very annoying, at least for me, is a control contact set as a trigger doesn't do anything. So we cannot use control contacts as a trigger. All right. Instead, what needs to be done, and let's see what does that look like. Let's kind of show you what that looks like. Controlling contacts are listed down here as a controlling contact. These are basically sort of ways to check status. They cannot be used as triggers. So this is where it bugged me because it took me a while to figure that out. I probably ran across it before, but it is what it is. And so you can't use these as track triggers or event triggers. Instead, they have to basically be something that's connected to one of your devices. It's an actual contact. I only created one. It was called a contact clone. So what I can do is I can create one other one, and we'll just call this, it's just basically C3. I won't relabel it because you guys know where I am. I am going to, just for clarity, edit the trackboard page. Let's get rid of this because I don't really want it on the layout because it'll confuse me for now. Oops. Close the event. We're going to add K1 here. So this is now our duplicate. And now we're going to go back to the events. And because I added those, this is the thing, you get a lot of this moving around because you don't have the real estate to do stuff. No, I don't need to rename it. I just need to move this up. We're going to get rid of this contact because we don't really want it there. We're going to put K1 there, and it will function the same way. Again, we're going to go in here, and we're going to change the action. And we do that. We basically need to do that for the arrival as well. Put that there. Make sure it's an action. All right. So now if we go under FS3 rather than this manual mode control contact, I'm going to delete that trigger and I'm now going to put this on there. And we will get rid of these states because we'll get back to this in a second here. Okay. And just kind of show back to here, I can control this, no problem. Now I need to basically have, like, if we click this, we also want this to mimic that. Since the event is already programmed in TCA1, that's this event here, I don't really need to do the reprogramming of that. Instead, what we're going to do is we're going to go to the K1 event, which is FS3. And this is a binary thing. So what we're going to do is we're going to actually load this contact in twice. And we're going to change this to an action. Okay. And this basically what it means is when the train reaches that contact, and what we want to do is we want to check to see if it's off. Okay, so it looks like that. So essentially when you make contact, if it sees that it's off, it will now turn the contact on. And we'll just call this the arrival of that, so we know that that's when it turns that contact on. And then we'll make a quick copy of that, and we're just going to reverse these. And we also need to reverse the trigger. And so there's, names. This is going to be the departure for that. Okay. And then we can save everything out here. Now you can see that if I click this, it mimics everything. And because the events were all programmed in TCA, it will function the same way. Okay. Okay, so next, what else did we cover in the article? The cloning of devices. So this is when he had things on one page. I needed to set it up that way. In his layout, basically, there were also points where this contact, he'd need to see what was going on over here on a separate page. And that kind of was confusing. So there was an error, something that I discovered when I was dealing with this. And what we'll do is I just kind of show you what happens. We're going to go to Edit Trackboard Page. And my assumption was that you can't have duplicates of one item on two different pages. And this is the reason why. If I took this switch, this one here, that's this one here, and I tried to put it on another trackboard page, this is what happens. This is what a lot of you may have seen. It's got these numbers and it just references and it gets really confusing. So there's no way to really know what's going on because you're using the same article on two different panels, track panels. And if you don't know, sure. So this is the main line and there's a connection point to this line. So let me quickly get rid of that so we are not confused. And you can see right now, so like if this one's active, I can click on this link here. If I want to go back to this panel, I can just click on that link rather than having to go through the trackboard menu and selecting one or the other layouts. So these are links that you guys can create if you haven't done so yet. But so in the article, what I did was I actually did something like K1 and I added it on this other layout. So, but when I was setting up this example, I realized, oh, this is weird. I could do this, and I didn't know that. I almost thought my article was useless, but, I got lucky. It turns out that if you have a trackboard page, your contacts can actually be duplicated on another page. At least, see, and they all kind of work as I want it to. So this is nice. You can have duplicated contacts on different panels. This, so in the example cited here, if this layout was so big that you cannot see track contact one, then you actually have a visual reference of what's going on the other panel. Because this is the actual track contact, and this will just be your visual reference that you know what's going on elsewhere on the layout without having to maneuver off this track plan. And I believe that is basically the article. I'm completed there. All right. Any questions on that, or did I completely bamboozle you folks? So,
Wake up, people. Wake up.
yeah. All right. We do have a question on the CS3. CS3 is the DCC search and the decoder read only through the programming track?
Yes.
Email plug.
Yes, you need to kind of like find the address of a locomotive. It needs to be on the programming track. And it's moderately successful in other brands
For DCC.
or
Cool.
DCC, yes.
Cool. All right. I think that's it for our articles. I think normally we have a little show and tell of new items. Did you have anything new or from
I have
last
one.
time?
Did we show the last time? Did we show the BNSF or new BNSF locomotives?
We might have. I believe we
I
did.
think we did. I think mine's still sitting here. I haven't even taken them home yet.
Yeah, mine's
So,
in the box.
yeah.
I haven't received anything new as of late.
I
So,
do have a couple of things that are new, but I didn't bring one of them in, so everyone will have to wait till next time. But what I did bring in, and I know I didn't show this because this came right after our last webinar. I was hoping it would show up for it, but I finally got my Kansas City Southern F7 ABA,
oh, nice.
which this is one I was missing for years and years and years, and Curtis had picked one up, and I offered to trade something for him, and he said, "No, I like it," because he knew I wanted it. So he wouldn't
Yeah,
trade
yeah.
it. So
It's like trying to get your Chrome Alpha.
so I
What
don't
was the
need
other
you
what
anymore.
was the other color you got?
The yellow,
The yellow one. Yeah, that's the yellow one.
the German Post Alpha yellow,
Yeah.
yes. But yeah, so I got that beauty. That's the new addition to the collection. Picked it up on an auction, and it's nice. So I do have representation of all the road names that Marklin has made in the F7s now,
That's good.
and even a couple that they didn't make.
Yeah, those are the ones that I kind of miss.
So, which are basically repaints. So,
Yeah.
but they're very
I don't
good.
have any.
They're
I don't
done
have any
very
repaint.
nicely. So I don't consider them. I do consider them repaints, but they're done.
I think the
I mean,
one
they
I
look like the
miss.
factory did them.
I think the one I'm missing is I don't know. Maybe I do have it. Is I don't know. It's either did Texas come out with the three?
No, the Texas Pacific, it came out as an AA, and you could buy the B unit separate.
Okay, but then it was the Amtrak. Amtrak had a three.
Amtrak came with an
different too.
ABA and an
Yeah,
AA.
yeah. So
in
this
the
is going
F7.
back into older stock, guys.
Yeah, I
One.
have those, by the way.
Yeah, I know you do. Thanks. You probably have two.
I have two of them. Yeah, I have two of everything.
Germans use multiple. Okay, so yeah, we do have a question. Can you talk about how to access staging yards on lower levels? That is,
A Schottenbahnhof, huh?
yeah, that's kind of a bane of my existence to some
Well,
degree.
that's easy. How to access it? You crawl underneath your layout. That's how you access it.
Yeah, but I think when I did mine, I really didn't have I didn't I don't really have a lot of clearance. So I would suggest
Right.
if you can have more clearance height wise, just so you can make sure you can get your arm in to the back
Yeah.
tracks.
You need the locomotive height plus your hand height.
Yeah, you need to be able to get into the unreachable parts. Mine is against the wall, so I can only reach it from one side. And not just your arm length. It would be nice if you had enough head clearance, otherwise you're looking at your layout like this. And that is not a fun thing.
Man, not with that melon.
Yeah, well, just I don't
Well,
know if you
now
heard my neck crack.
is Brian here is asking the question. Are you asking whether you want to see if a track is clear of a train or if you want physical access?
Yeah, that's a good question. Yes.
That's you can take that two ways.
Yeah.
So physical access, that's entirely up to you. Um, you can put contact tracks in to check for occupancy for the Central Station
Yeah,
3.
I can show mine too.
Oh,
So
he says he's worried about switches going bad. You know, yeah, I mean, some people use cameras. Some people just have it where they can see it, where they can get to it if there's something wrong. The Central Station can show occupancy, and for turnouts, we have an article if a turnout motor goes bad, how to fix it, so to say. Uh, Again, digital@marklin.com, request that article. I think I've already emailed you the other one you um, asked about. So a couple things you can do is on your layout board, when you have a turnout, you can have a hole cut out so you can just access underneath and get to the turnout motor. Um, yeah, other than that, it's a matter of tearing up track, which is never fun.
yeah, the thing is when it comes to the turnouts, I'm usually listening for the click. If it's not clicking,
Yeah,
if I can't, so it's not like I want to see it down there because I can't see it anyways. Again, my head has to go sideways to even
yeah,
view one edge of it. I don't have actually pictures of my layout because as long as it's been standing, it still looks like wood. So there's a lot of bench work. But if you want to see some of the panels, let's see. Let me I can give you a zoom. You can see one of the more advanced developments that I did on it. Let me show the actual when you access your layout using your IP number. I can show that really quick. That one. Let's see. You can just see all the boards that I got going. Where's the share panel? Share screen one. Yeah, these are some of the many sections that I have. I do actually have an uncompleted area here, and I set up a control panel just to see what we're doing. This is my shot and bond off down here. My only active switches are on this side, so I do have a little bit of a cutout because everything comes in on that side. I can zoom in there. This here, this mess right here, by the way, is tracking. I'm tracking locomotives, which I don't use often because it's it's a bear. It's a bear to work with. Markin could simplify this, but if only they would pay attention to what was being done, then they would implement it. But it hasn't been done, and I get it. It's a lot of work going on because each of these are all, by the way, control contacts. None of these will activate events. These are what we talked about earlier. This section here is basically the main part that's viewable. Everything else here, this is viewable down here. The blue area is hidden. This will be hidden, but it's still viewable. I also extended this so I can actually have a random thing. Now, the other thing that's cool about this is rather than have the set order of entry and exit, which I did in my earlier articles, we use the randomizing macro so that you never, whenever a train would enter a vacant line, you never know what was going to come out. So it would just randomly pick which one of these go out.
Now,
And usually when
does
you,
that
huh?
does that random macro, would that also choose your fifth line and allow a train to go through as part of the random choices?
Um, well, it's not necessary. I didn't do it that way. The main thing about this run out was when I had, that's what these two contacts are for, by the way. These two contacts were basically to let me know if the train was too long for my staging yard. Because once the train hits there, I'd have it check if this was occupied or not. And if it was occupied, then it automatically sends it on the bypass route. So then I knew not to send it into the staging yard. If it was short enough, like it didn't have contact here, then it would randomize this. Now, the funny thing is, whenever you start your CS3 and you run this, typically what happens is it's always the train that enters that leaves first. It doesn't really randomize right away. And so you go through a cycle, maybe two, and then it starts to vary your output. I did the same thing up here. Again, these two connector contacts is my length. So if it was too long, there's no bypass, but essentially, this is what I did here. It's a length detector, and it would send it out. Because what I ended up having to do is I ended up extending this length altogether. Now, I guess if it is too long, I think I did program it. If the train's too long for even this, then it's automatically assigned to go right through, and it doesn't stop anywhere. And that was fun to do. This whole tracking bit was the ability to know where a locomotive was, and I programmed to slow down as it went through the depot station, and as soon as it went through, it just kind of pick up speed. So that's kind of the whole layout there. But just kind of showing you guys that the programming of that was the most complex version of it. Okay, now nothing else to show. We answered that. Yeah. CC user. Now, since I don't have a locomotive, you don't have a locomotive. I do have sort of a surprise for you, Rick.
I did have a locomotive, by the way.
Oh, go for that first, then we'll kind of.
I already showed it. Kansas City
Yeah,
Southern. Remember that part?
Well, I ignored the stuff you actually showed.
It was just a minute ago.
Yeah, just a
Dory.
second ago. It just happened a while ago. So you've been asking for this for a long time. I got a 3D printer recently, and I programmed this in for you.
Oh, there it is. Sweetness.
And it's got, now I didn't do trigonometry to figure out what the tilt angle is on this, but I did get it working. This is actually, I prototyped one first. And
Tell everyone what it is.
Well, you'll see it here.
Okay.
It's basically, as a matter of fact, if you want to see one in action.
Oh, okay.
Don't mind the messy desk. I'll just grab this. It's your
nice.
And so this is its flat state, and I gave it. Let's see, lift it up. That's
probably need two hands.
Tilt. And there's a secondary tilt, and if you really wanted to, there's actually a high tilt angle this way.
Yeah, that's what I'm dying for right there.
Yeah, and you can kind of see. Now I kind of show you what the bracket actually looks like here. So back up there, and you can see I've got that. Not
okay,
much.
Yeah.
And then this.
The second one. It's a nice simple mechanism too.
Yeah, and then you have a shelf. Now it's not glued in, so you can always take that off if you want to, but it's in there pretty tight. So this one you'll get at Euro West, because there's already a tilt to the normal CS3 string, so
right.
It's roughly about that. And there's a flush thing there. So this is
yeah, my problem is here at the office, the tilt reflects the lights in the ceiling, and I can't read the screen.
Yeah.
So I need two of them, by the way.
We'll have to print up another one because I'm going to use it. Well, I'll have them both because I know you didn't like the other color. And I'll show that to you. Now the thing is, my website, I have a domain doesn't actually have a website, but my address is what's in Kurt's head, and so now you're stuck with my labeling. I don't know if you can see that.
What's in Kurt's head?
No, it's witchcraft.
Oh, okay.
Abbreviated what's in Kurt's head, which the domain is actually somebody already has it, so I can't register it. So it's witchcraft.
Well, that's we know what's in your head, and we know it's nothing.
So I'm actually getting some more filament in gray or blue.
Oh,
This is the one I've done out of old PLA.
yeah, that's a color right there.
Yeah, it's bright, but I won't lose it. I know where it is. Yeah, so you need two of them, huh?
Yeah, I need one for each room here.
Okay, and you can see there's when you get it, you have to put your own mounting feet here, and the mounting
Yeah.
feet on the CS3, the mounting feet for the CS2 don't fit,
There you go.
but I did put depressions in for the CS3, so it kind of locks
Okay.
it in place along with the front shelf, and this fits
Nice.
between the two plugs on your CS3.
Yeah.
So
Perfect. Thank you.
I'm sure everybody else is going to be planning for one.
Yeah. Or at least the design.
Yeah. So, but I set it up here on the desk, and it actually is very handy because it was allowing me to access my screen without the mouse. So there you go.
Awesome. Would that only take 5 years?
Yeah. Well, the other 3D printers never actually worked well.
Yeah, I know.
So when I got this one going,
Yeah, it's definitely a cool little toy to play with. Can't wait for the salt and pepper shakers.
salt and pepper, yeah, useless stuff. My woman maker too.
because you get a 3D printer and you have to print salt and pepper shakers. I mean,
No, they
button-
don't do that. There's so much
missing
useless
button from
stuff
your
that
shirt,
people print
you know.
out on a 3D printer. I'm gonna print up a bunch of back scratchers.
Yeah, the useless things you make with a 3D printer.
Yeah. So. Okay. Any other questions, guys? Doesn't look like it. We're a couple people had to take off, and we had some viewers on YouTube, which was nice. Thanks for joining us there.
Yeah, thanks everybody. Unless there's any other questions, we can stand here staring at each other or do something productive.
Yep.
Well,
Looks like we're winding down.
yeah.
Yep. All right, guys. Well, what? Our next week, CS2 to CS3. That wasn't really a question. So, we don't know if there's anything coming up down the pipeline. Yeah, we don't have that heads up. So, but CS3, good job. Okay, then I think that's it, guys. We will probably see you in 2 months. I don't know. We don't have a specific. What's the specific date on there?
No, it's as long as there's no shows or something, it's
That's
every
August
2 months, and it's the
August
second.
13th is our next webinar.
Okay.
And if
June,
you
July.
happen to be in the Bay Area, we have the EuroWest show on July 12th and 13th. So bring some change with you because it's a huge swap meet. So for us.
Yes.
So okay.
So,
All right, guys.
everyone.
Thanks for visiting.